One wonders what David was contemplating when he penned these words.
Let God arise, let his enemies be scattered. Let those who hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so drive them away. As wax melts before the fire, so let the wicked perish at the presence of God. Psalm 68, 1 and 2.
David had never seen an explosion, but he knew what fire would do. The psalmist Asaph continues the thought.
Our God shall come, and shall not keep silent. A fire shall devour before him, and it shall be very tempestuous all around him. Psalm 53.
The psalms from which these generalized predictions of God's fiery wrath are taken both refer to places within Israel. It's not too much of a stretch to find their ultimate fulfillment in the future war against Magog. David also says,
Your hand will find all your enemies. Your right hand will find those who hate you. You shall make them as a fiery oven in the time of your anger. Yahweh shall swallow them up in his wrath, and the fire shall devour them. Their offspring you shall destroy from the earth, and their descendants from among the sons of men. For they intended evil against you. They devised a plot which they are not able to perform. Therefore you will make them turn their back. You will make ready your arrows on your string toward their faces. Be exalted, O Yahweh, in your own strength. We will sing and praise your power. Psalm 21, 8 through 13.
Who are these enemies the king is describing? Having studied Islam, the term plot jumped off the page and bit me. In the Muslim scriptures, Muhammad and his God are forever talking about plots and schemes. Typical and telling is this passage from the Quran. Quote, Do they not see us advancing from all sides into the land they control, reducing its borders? When Allah dooms, there is none who can postpone his doom. Surely they devised their plots, but we, that is Allah, are the best of schemers. Quran 13:41. This is but one of thousands of confirmations that Islam is all about conquest. But Yahweh knew their feeble plots 1,600 years before Muhammad put the words in Allah's mouth. They have no idea who they're dealing with. Notice the nature of judgment here. Fire will be the primary means of Magog's destruction, but beyond that, it appears that their entire race will be annihilated. Their offspring, their descendants, will also be destroyed. Earlier in this chapter, we covered the first few verses of Ezekiel 39. In verse 2, there's a play on words that's totally lost in the English, especially in the New King James Version. The Authorized or King James Version renders it like this.
And I will turn thee back, and leave but a sixth part of thee.
There is a single Hebrew word for the phrase, leave but the sixth part. Shawshaw is the poetic way of saying annihilate in Hebrew. The wordplay comes from its resemblance to shasha, spelled differently but pronounced exactly the same way, which means to divide into sixths. Whether Yahweh meant that he was going to kill 5/6 of Gog's armies within Israel, or 5/6 of the combined citizenry of the Magog Federation, or whether he really meant annihilate, totally obliterate them, the carnage will be unprecedented in the history of man. Bear in mind that the total death toll from this war will be 1/4 of the Earth's population, over 1.5 billion people. So the only question is whether the first billion out of that 1.5 billion who will die will be followers of Islam, that is, 5/6 of the Earth's 1.3 billion Muslims, or 5/6 of the population of the Magog Federation proper, perhaps a third of that number, or only Gog's armies are completely wasted, leaving the rest of the carnage more generalized. The Psalm 21 passage quoted above, especially verse 10, seems to favor the former theory, leaving a mere 500 million casualties, 9 or 10 times the death toll of World War II, spread out over the rest of the earth. Though thermonuclear war won't be visited upon Israel proper, the fire of Yahweh's wrath will be employed there, among other things, to destroy Magog's armies, leaving devastation and famine in its wake. The newly appointed priest will waste no time in going to the new temple to intercede on behalf of the Jewish people. The prophet Joel describes the scene.
Gird yourselves and lament, you priests. Wail, you who minister before the altar. Come, lie all night in sackcloth, you who minister to my God. For the grain offering and the drink offering are withheld from the house of your God. Consecrate a fast, call a sacred assembly. Gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of Yahweh your God, and cry out to Yahweh.
Remember, one of Yahweh's stated purposes for allowing this costly victory to transpire is to drive Israel back into his arms of protection.
Alas, for the day of Yahweh is at hand. It shall come as destruction from the Almighty. Is not the food cut off before our eyes, joy and gladness from the house of our God? The seed shrivels under the clods, storehouses are in shambles, barns are broken down, for the grain has withered. How the animals groan, the herds of cattle are restless, because they have no pasture. Even the flocks of sheep suffer punishment. O Yahweh, to you I cry out, for fire has devoured the open pastures, and a flame has burned all the trees of the field. The beasts of the field also cry out to you, for the water brooks are dried up, and fire has devoured the open pastures. Joel 1:13-20.
The Muslims are gone, but so are the crops, orchards, grassland, and water supply. The Israelis are victorious, but in dire straits. Yahweh will hear their cry and meet their needs, even in this most dire of circumstances.
He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might he increases strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fail. But those who wait on Yahweh shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Isaiah 40:29-31.
Not all of the Jews will wait on Yahweh, of course, but those who do will find shelter and renewed strength to face the challenges yet to come. They'll need it. It's not over yet. Having observed Yahweh's modus operandi, I believe that he will let Gog's armies get all the way to the suburbs of Jerusalem before he burns their biscuits. Somehow it just wouldn't be him to miraculously cut off his people's enemies before all rational hope was lost. Jerusalem may get a little singed around the edges, but God won't let it get destroyed. Not this time.
Yahweh said to Satan, Yahweh rebuke you, Satan. Yahweh who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? Zechariah 3:2.
Indeed, a smoldering stick rescued from the fire and used as a club to bludgeon those who hate Yahweh and his people. Zechariah has a lot to say about these days.
The burden of the word of Yahweh against Yisrael. Thus says Yahweh, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding people.
That's Dar al-Islam.
When they lay siege against Yehudah and Jerusalem, and it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples.
This, in contrast, is the whole world, and a bit later.
All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it.
God reminds us of his greatness, his resume, as it were, and then assures us that in the last days he intends to defend his chosen city. How?
In that day, says Yahweh, I will strike every horse with confusion, and its rider with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah, and I will strike every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, The inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength, in Yahweh of hosts, their God. In that day I will make the governors of Judah like a firepan in the woodpile, like a fiery torch in the sheaves. They shall devour all the surrounding peoples on the right hand and on the left. But Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place. Jerusalem.
The Israelis won't just sit around waiting for the Antichrist and his UN peacekeepers to deal with Gog and his armies. It's their homeland. They will be on the front lines defending it. This new generation will have heard of the miraculous victories of 48 and 67 and 73, of course, but the Israelis have never faced such impossible odds before. They're under no illusions. If Yahweh isn't fighting with them and for them, they're dead. Zechariah confirms here that he is. The governors whom God will raise up to lead the Israelis in battle will be a fiery torch among the sheaves, inciting their troops to valor and victory in the strength of Yahweh wherever they confront the Muslims. The reference to blinded horses seems to mean that Magog's expensive battlefield technology will fail, leaving them with catastrophically errant comprehension of the battle space, and contributing, as we have seen, to a disastrous level of friendly fire fratricide. Rider madness indicates a pattern of disastrous blunders on the part of the Muslim military leadership.
Yahweh will save the tents of Yehudah first, so that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall not become greater than that of Yehudah. In that day Yahweh will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The one who is feeble among them in that day shall be like David, and the house of David shall be like God, like the angel of Yahweh before them. It shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Zechariah 12:1-9.
Historically, Judah is the territory south of Jerusalem. Much of it is barren wasteland today. Well over half of Israel's population lives in the Tel Aviv-Jerusalem corridor at the country's waist. It seems reasonable to assume that since, according to Daniel, the Antichrist has overrun Egypt, the Israelis will use this southern territory as a fallback position as Magog's forces attack Jerusalem and Tel Aviv from the north. Yahweh gives the least of them the valor of King David, of whom it was sung he killed his 10,000s, as they go out against Magog. And beyond that, we should not ignore the implications of the genetic links to the house of David and the tribe of Judah here. Yahweh is quite involved with individual Israelite tribal affiliations at this point in time. Apparently, the stars of the Battle of Magog are from the tribe of Judah, King Yahushua's tribe. Yahweh knows who they are, even if they don't.